Last week, my son begged me for money for his family, so I showed him my hidden fortune in the wall, $3.5 million. I never imagined a mother's love could turn into currency. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this seems familiar, I just ask you to leave a like and subscribe. You'll be helping me continue to get this off my chest. My name is Eleanor Ellie Hope Miller. I'm 74, and I live in a 2-story house in Park Slope, Brooklyn, New York City. It's a structure from the 60s, with vintage tile work in the kitchen and an internal patio where I cultivate my red geraniums and fresh herbs. The house smells of cinnamon and robust dark roast coffee, the dried chili peppers hanging from the ceiling, and that particular aroma of homes inhabited by decades of memories. My routine began every morning at 5:30. The sound of the garbage truck woke me before the alarm, and I couldn't fall back asleep. I'd get up, slip on my wool-lined slippers, the same ones Robert gave me 5 Christmases ago, when I still pretended to love him, and walk barefoot across the cold tiles to the kitchen. I'd make coffee in the vintage aluminum coffee pot I bought at the Union Square Green Market. When Ethan was 12 and still hugged me when he came home from school, 3 scoops of coffee, 2 of brown sugar, a splash of evaporated milk, always in the same chipped blue mug, the only one that survived the set my late husband Robert gave me on our 10th anniversary. Then I'd sit on the living room sofa, that green velvet sofa Ethan says is embarrassing when he has visitors, and watch out the window as the city woke up. The street sounds began, the shouts of local fruit and coffee cart vendors. Kids ran toward schools with backpacks bouncing on their backs, while women swept the sidewalks with push brooms. But that morning, everything changed. The phone rang at 7:15. It wasn't the hour Ethan usually called. In fact, he hadn't called in 4 months, not since I told him I couldn't lend him money for the down payment on his new condo on the Upper East Side. 4 months of silence that I had filled by talking to my plants and watching soap operas on basic cable. "Mom!" His voice sounded broken, desperate. It wasn't the cold voice he'd used last time. "Tell me, son. Are you okay?" "No, Mom. I'm not okay. We're in real trouble. Tiffany and we lost everything. The company went bankrupt. I lost my job. And the debts. My God. The debts are drowning us." Tiffany was his wife of 8 years. A thin woman with perfect teeth and perpetually flawless nails, who worked selling life insurance and had never addressed more than 3 words to me in a row. She'd greet me with a kiss on the cheek at family dinners, but was always in a rush to leave, always finding an excuse to slip away early. "What do you need, Ethan?" "Money, Mom. Whatever. Whatever you can. They're going to take the condo. The bank already sent the first notice. If we don't pay within 2 weeks, they'll throw us out onto the street." His words hit me like a gut punch in the middle of a calm day. My son, who had grown up within these mustard yellow walls, who had learned to walk in this very courtyard where my plants now grew, was asking for help. My mother's instinct snapped into action. "How much do you need?" It's about $50,000, Mom. I know it's a lot. I know you don't have that much. But anything you can give me, $50,000. An amount that represented more than most people my age had saved for a lifetime. Ethan knew I lived on a modest pension, that I bought my vegetables at the Tuesday farmers market because they were cheaper, that I mended my clothes instead of buying new ones. But Ethan didn't know what I was hiding. "Come by tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, I told him after a pause that felt eternal. "We need to talk." "Are you going to help me, Mom?" "Come by tomorrow, son." I hung up the phone and sat there, looking at my wrinkled hands that trembled slightly. Hands that had worked for decades, that had washed thousands of dishes, sewn hundreds of buttons, that had saved penny by penny what was now my most guarded secret. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house like a restless spirit, touching every piece of furniture, every photograph, every object that had survived the passing years. I stopped in front of the armoire in the master bedroom, that solid wood piece Robert and I had bought in a furniture district in Queens, paying for it on a 2-year installment plan. Behind that armoire, in a cavity Robert had made in the wall over 40 years ago, I kept the fortune I had built, drop by drop, dollar by dollar, over decades of silent sacrifice. When Robert died of a heart attack 15 years ago, I was 59. Too young to resign myself to living on charity, but too old to start over in the formal job market. So I became what they called in my neighborhood a local housekeeper and cook. I washed clothes, prepared catered food, watched children, and cleaned houses for families who had more money than time. Of every dollar I earned, I set aside 50 cents. I put them in an empty blue tin cookie box with the windmill drawings that was left over from some distant Christmas. When the tin was full, I exchanged the coins for bills. When I had enough bills, I hid them in the wall. For years, no one knew about my treasure. Not Ethan, not my friends at the market, not Mrs. Lewis, who lived next door and knew all the neighborhood gossip. It was my life insurance, my shield against abandonment, my dignity made into money. But now, hearing my son's desperate cries over the phone, that money had turned into something else. The chance to be useful again, to be needed, to be a mother. The next day, I prepared pot roast with all the fixings, Ethan's favorite meal since he was a child. I set the table with the hand-stitched tablecloth my mother had made, served freshly brewed iced tea in glass pitchers, and waited. He arrived on time, but he wasn't alone. Tiffany stepped out of the car and walked toward the house, her heels clicking on the cobblestone walkway. She wore a tight black dress and sunglasses that she didn't remove even after entering the house. "Smells delicious, Mrs. Miller," Tiffany said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sit down. Let's eat first." During the meal, Ethan told me the details of their crisis. He had invested his severance savings into a cryptocurrency business that turned out to be a scam. Bitcoin, Ethereum, digital assets that I didn't understand, but that had devoured their liquid savings like termites. Tiffany had lost her job selling insurance because the company was downsizing, and now they faced a mountain of debt that grew daily with interest. "We bought the condo 3 years ago, when things were good," Ethan explained, nervously tearing at the bread on his plate. "We took out a big mortgage because we thought our income would keep rising. But now we can't even afford the basic utilities," Tiffany interrupted, wiping her lips with a paper napkin. "And frankly, Mrs. Miller, we don't know what else to do." We finished eating in silence. I watched my son, trying to recognize in his 36-year-old face the boy who used to help me fold the laundry in the courtyard, the teenager who comforted me when his father came home drunk on Friday nights. "Let's go to the bedroom," I finally said. I led them to my room. Tiffany looked with disdain at the floral curtains, the family photographs in cheap frames, the hand-knitted quilt that had taken me 2 years to finish. I went to the armoire and began to move it slowly. Ethan came over to help me. "What are you doing, Mom? Help me push this back." When the armoire revealed the wall, I reached for the loose brick that Robert had prepared as a secret hiding place so many years ago. I carefully removed it, put my hand into the cavity, and pulled out the first wad of bills. Ethan's eyes widened. Tiffany took off her sunglasses for the first time all afternoon. "Mom, what is this?" I kept pulling out wads. Hundreds, 50s, and 20s. Euros I had bought when the dollar was weak. Some pounds sterling I had gotten at a good rate on the black market. "How much is in there?" Tiffany asked, her voice choked. "Enough," I answered, still pulling out money. "More than $3.5 million. Ethan collapsed onto the bed. Tiffany put her hands to her mouth. "Mom, where did all this come from?" "From 40 years of not wasting money on nonsense. From getting up at 5 in the morning to wash other people's clothes. From eating beans so you could eat meat. From walking instead of taking the bus to save the quarter for the fare." The room filled with a thick silence, interrupted only by the ticking of the wall clock I had inherited from my grandmother. "But Mom, why did you save so much?" Ethan asked. "You could have lived better. You could have treated yourself." I looked at him intently, this son who had been my reason for living for so many years. And I told him the words that would change everything between us. I saved it so I wouldn't be a burden, so I wouldn't have to beg anyone for help, to keep my dignity until the last day of my life. Ethan reached out his hand for the bills, but I stopped him. "Wait. If I'm going to give you this money, I want something in return. Anything, Mom. Whatever you need. I want you to visit me. Not just when you need money. I want you to call me to ask how I am. I want to be your mother again, not your bank." Ethan nodded with tears in his eyes. "I promise you, Mom. Things are going to change." I gave him $50,000 that afternoon, enough to save their condo and pay off some urgent debts. Tiffany counted it twice before putting it in her leather bag. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller," she said, heading toward the door. "You don't know what this means to us." I watched them drive away in their silver car, and for the first time in months, I felt something akin to hope. I didn't know I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The first 2 weeks after I gave Ethan the money were the sweetest I had lived in years. I woke up every morning hoping the phone would ring, imagining his voice thanking me, telling me how he had solved his problems, inviting me to see how his condo looked once the debts were paid. I brewed extra coffee, just in case he showed up unannounced. I bought pastries at the local bakery, Danish pastries, glazed donuts, and crumb cake, because I knew he had loved them since he was a kid. I even cleaned the guest room, the room that had served as a storage space for years, thinking that maybe Ethan and Tiffany would want to spend the night some weekend, like when he was single and used to spend Sundays with me. Every ring of the doorbell made me rush to the door, the mailman, the woman selling cleaning products, the Jehovah's Witnesses who visited the neighborhood every Thursday, but it was never Ethan. One afternoon, while watering my geraniums in the courtyard, I heard familiar voices from the other side of the fence. It was Mrs. Lewis's children, my lifelong neighbors, talking in their garden. "Did you see Ethan's new car?" said David, the older son. "A brand new BMW. Must have cost at least $60,000. "Yeah, and Tiffany is bragging on Facebook that they went on vacation to South Beach," responded his sister Sarah. She uploaded about 20 photos at the Grand Ocean Resort. My blood ran cold. I dropped the watering can onto the courtyard tiles, and the water spilled onto my slippers, soaking my feet. I ran to my phone and looked up Tiffany's profile on Facebook. There were the photographs. She and Ethan on the beach, colorful cocktails in their hands and paper umbrellas. Tiffany wore a gold bikini that sparkled under the Caribbean sun, and Ethan had that relaxed smile of someone with no financial worries. Well-deserved vacation after so much stress. Miami vibes. Blessed life, Tiffany had written next to a photo where they toasted with champagne in front of the turquoise sea. I kept checking. Photos at luxury restaurants, at spas, on diving excursions. An image of Tiffany showing a pair of pearl earrings to the camera. My love spoils me so much. Spoiled lucky girl. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the photographs. Every image was a slap in the face. They were spending my money, the money I had saved dollar by dollar for 40 years, on luxuries I had never allowed myself, while I was still eating refried beans and mending the same old clothes. I dialed his number. No answer. I dialed again. Voicemail. "Ethan, it's your mother. I saw the photos from South Beach. Call me, please. We need to talk." 3 days passed without a response. Finally, on Friday night, my phone rang. It was him. "Hello, Mom." "Ethan, why didn't you call me? I've been trying to reach you." "I've been very busy, Mom. You know, resolving all the problems we had. I saw you went on vacation." Silence on the other end of the line. I could hear music in the background, voices, as if he were at a party. "Yeah, well, Tiffany needed to relax. She's been very stressed with all this debt business. Her therapist recommended she take a few days to recover emotionally." "Therapist?" I asked, confused. I didn't know Tiffany was seeing a therapist. "Yes, Mom. When you don't have money, when you live with the anxiety of losing your home, your mental health suffers. You wouldn't understand because you've never had any real financial responsibilities." His words hit me like cold water. I never had any real financial responsibilities? I, who had worked since I was 14. I, who had financially supported my family for decades. I, who had raised a son alone after his father became an alcoholic. "Ethan, I worked my whole life." "Yes, Mom. But they were simple jobs. Washing clothes, making food. It's not the same as managing serious investments, having employees under you, making decisions that affect the future of a whole family." Every word was a knife. My son, whom I had fed with money earned washing other people's clothes, was now minimizing my effort as if it were a hobby. "Besides," he continued, "we needed that trip to make business contacts. Tiffany met some investors at the resort. We're putting together a new project for selling digital assets that's going to multiply the initial capital." Initial capital. My money had become their initial capital. And the condo? Did you pay the mortgage yet? Yes, that's already resolved. But Mom, I need to ask you another favor. There it was. The real reason for his call. This new business is a unique opportunity. The returns could be 300% in 6 months, but we need more liquidity to enter as main partners. How much do you need now? About $125,000. I know it's a lot, but think about it. If we invest well, we can pay you back double, triple. You'll have money to live like a queen for the rest of your life? $125,000. More than double what I had already given him. Ethan, let me think about it. There's not much time to think, Mom. It's a very small window of opportunity. If we don't get in this week, we lose the chance. But son, that money… What are you going to do with all that money, Mom? He interrupted me with a tone I had never heard before. You've already lived your life. You're not going to spend $3.5 million buying medicine and paying for doctor's appointments. That fortune is just sitting there rotting, while we, who have our whole lives ahead of us, are losing opportunities that could benefit the whole family. The whole family? I asked, my voice cracking. Yes, Mom. When our business grows, obviously we'll take better care of you. We can put you in a luxury assisted living facility or hire private nurses to attend to you. But we need you to trust us now. Luxury assisted living. Private nurses. As if I were an invalid who needed to be managed by others. I'm going to think about it, I repeated. Okay, but don't take too long. I need an answer tomorrow night. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stayed seated in the living room, looking at the family photographs hanging on the walls. Ethan as a baby in my arms. Ethan at his first communion, in his white suit and gap-toothed smile. Ethan graduating from college, while I clapped from the stands in a dress that had cost me 2 weeks' wages, but which I had bought because I wanted to look presentable on his special day. At what point had I stopped being his mother and become his source of funding? That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house like a wandering spirit, touching every object I had bought with my effort, every piece of furniture I had paid for on installments, every ornament I had gotten at the Sunday flea market because it was too expensive in department stores. I stopped in front of the bathroom mirror and looked closely at myself. A woman of 74 with gray hair pulled back in a loose braid, with wrinkles that told the story of decades of worries and sacrifices. A woman who had saved for 40 years to avoid being a burden, and who now discovered that her own son saw her as exactly that. A burden with money. The next day, Ethan arrived without warning. It was 11 in the morning, and I was making homemade lemonade when I heard his car park outside. He came alone. Tiffany had stayed in the car, talking on the phone with the tinted windows up so I couldn't see her. Have you thought about it, Mom? Sit down, son. Let's talk. There's not much to talk about. It's a simple decision. Either we seize this opportunity or we let it pass and remain poor our whole lives. Poor? My son, who had just returned from South Beach, who was wearing a shirt that cost more than my monthly food budget, was talking to me about poverty. Ethan, do you love me? The question caught him off guard. He blinked several times before answering. Of course I love you, Mom. You're my mother. And why do you love me? What do you mean, why? You're my family. No, son. Tell me, what is it that you love about me? He fell silent. I could see the wheels turning in his head, searching for an answer that didn't come. Well, you're a good person. You've been a good mother. Was I a good mother when I fed you before myself? When I worked double shifts to buy you school supplies? When I stayed up all night taking care of you when you had a fever? Yes, of course. And now? Now that I have money, am I still a good mother? Mom, I don't understand what you're trying to get at. I got up and walked to the window. Outside, Tiffany was still in the car, now putting on makeup in the sun visor mirror. You know what, Ethan? I'm going to give you the money. His eyes immediately lit up, but with one condition. Whatever you want, Mom. I want you to bring the grandkids. I haven't seen them since Christmas. I want them to come here for lunch on Sunday. I want to feel like I have a family again. Of course, Mom. Absolutely. We'll all come on Sunday. Do you promise me? I promise you on my life. I went to the bedroom, took out $125,000 from my hiding place, and handed it to him. Ethan quickly counted it and put it in a gym bag he had specifically brought for that. Thanks, Mom. Seriously. This is going to change our lives. He kissed me on the forehead, the first in months, and ran to the car where Tiffany was waiting. I watched them drive away through the window, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Sunday, I was going to see my grandkids. Sunday, I was going to be a grandmother again. I didn't know that Sunday would become the most painful day of my entire life. On Saturday, I woke up at 5 in the morning to go to the farmer's market. I wanted to buy everything necessary to prepare Sunday's meal. A whole chicken to make pot roast, vegetables for the side dishes my grandkids loved, fresh dough for the homemade rolls, and those handmade gourmet chocolates from Vendor 47. I walked through the market aisles as if it were a celebration. I touched every vegetable, smelled every herb, chose the reddest tomatoes and the firmest onions. I spent almost $100 on that shopping trip, more than I usually spent on food for an entire week. But for the first time in months, I felt entitled to that luxury. I was going to cook for my family. My grandkids were coming to the house. Ryan, 8 years old, who always asked me to tell him stories about when his dad was a kid. And Sophia, 5, who hugged me so hard I felt like my bones might break. But it was the kind of pain a grandmother yearns to feel. I returned home laden with bags, humming old Frank Sinatra songs that my late husband used to sing to me while we cooked together on Sundays. I put all the food on the kitchen table and started planning the menu as if it were the New Year's Eve dinner. That Saturday, I cleaned the house like I hadn't in years. I dusted every book on the shelf, washed the curtains by hand, waxed the tiled floors until they shone like mirrors. I even pruned the geraniums in the courtyard and cut fresh flowers to put in vases all over the house. Saturday night, I began preparing the pot roast from scratch. I seared the meat in the cast-iron skillet I had inherited from my mother. The aroma filled the whole house. Herbs, spices, rich broth. I blended the vegetables in the antique food mill, slowly, as my grandmother had taught me when I was 10. While I worked, I spoke aloud, as if my grandkids were already there. Look, Ryan, this is the secret of a good pot roast. You have to sear the meat just right. And you, Sophia, you're going to help me mash the potatoes. Right, my love? I went to bed past midnight with my hands stained and my heart full of anticipation. It had been years since I felt so useful, so needed, so alive. Sunday, I woke up before the sun. I bathed with rose soap, put on my navy blue dress, the one I saved for special occasions, and tied my hair back in a bun that made me look more presentable. I even put on a little of the lipstick I had bought for Mrs. Lewis's daughter's wedding, but had never had occasion to use. By 10 in the morning, everything was ready. The pot roast was slowly cooking. The side dishes were waiting in the refrigerator. The fresh rolls were covered with an embroidered napkin to keep them warm. I had set the table with my best china, the white set with blue flowers that I had bought on installments over 5 months, and had cut paper napkins with scissors to make them look like cloth. 12 o'clock came and went with no sign of Ethan. At 1 in the afternoon, I dialed his phone. No answer. At 2 in the afternoon, I called again. This time he answered, but there was background noise. Music, voices, the sound of glasses clinking. Ethan? It's Mom. Are you on your way? Oh, Mom. The day got complicated. We're at a family lunch with Tiffany's parents. It's her dad's birthday and we can't leave. But son, we agreed you were coming today. I already cooked. I have everything ready. Yeah, I know. But this came up last minute. Tiffany's parents bought a new house in Greenwich, Connecticut, and are having a housewarming party. Relatives came in from Texas, from California. We can't miss it. From the other side of the line, I heard Tiffany's voice shouting, "Ethan, come here. They're about to cut the cake." "And the children?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Can't you bring the children even for a little while?" "No, Mom. The kids are enjoying the pool at the new house. Besides, they already ate. They had gourmet catering from that expensive restaurant in Midtown." Gourmet catering. While the pot roast I had prepared with so much love was cooling on my stove. "But Ethan, you promised me." "Mom, don't be dramatic. We can go another day. It's no big deal." It's no big deal. A whole Sunday preparing food, cleaning the house, dressing up as if for church, waiting for the family that never arrived, was no big deal. "When then?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "I don't know, Mom. During the week is impossible because of work and the kids have school. Next weekend, Tiffany wants us to go to the Hamptons with some business partners. I'll call you to coordinate." He hung up without saying goodbye. I was left standing in the middle of the living room, dressed for a party that was never going to happen, surrounded by food that no one was going to taste, in a house I had cleaned for guests who never arrived. I went to the kitchen and uncovered the pot roast. The aroma was still delicious, but now it smelled of loneliness, of wasted time, of unrequited love. I tasted a little with a wooden spoon. It was perfect. Maybe the best pot roast I had ever made, and no one was going to taste it. I served myself a plate, sat at the table I had set for 6 people, and ate alone. Every bite tasted of salty tears that fell without my being able to control them. After eating, I washed all the dishes that hadn't been used, put the food in plastic containers that I knew I would be throwing out all week because I couldn't eat so much by myself. I folded the paper napkins I had cut so carefully and put them in a drawer where they would likely stay forever. The next day, Monday, I decided to try to contact him again. This time I called early, at 8 in the morning, thinking that perhaps Ethan would be more available before he left for work. "Mom, why are you calling so early? I just wanted to know how you are, how the lunch went yesterday." "Very well. Tiffany's parents' house is incredible. 3 stories, heated pool, a huge yard. You should see it." "And the children? How are the children?" "Fine, fine. Ryan can already swim. Sophia still needs floaties, but she had a lot of fun." There was an awkward pause. I waited for him to ask me how my Sunday had been, to apologize for not coming, to suggest a new date, but the silence stretched until it became unbearable. "Son, could you come this week? Even for a little while. I miss you very much." "This week is very complicated, Mom. We're finalizing the new business deal. Lots of meetings, lots of papers to sign." "The digital assets business?" "Exactly. It's more complex than we thought. We need to open overseas accounts, make international transfers. All to maximize the returns, you understand?" I didn't understand, but I nodded as if he could see me through the phone. "In fact, Mom, that's what I was going to call you about later. We need to make an additional investment. The partners put in more capital than expected, and if we don't match the amount, we'll end up as minority partners." "How much?" "It's about $200,000. 200,000. We were already at 325,000 total, more than half of everything I had saved in 40 years. "Ethan, I've already given you so much money." "Mom, this is an investment. Everything I've asked for is an investment in the family's future. When this works, you'll have monthly dividends that will be more than you spend in a whole year. And if it doesn't work?" "What do you mean if it doesn't work? Don't you trust me? I'm your son, Mom. Do you think I would steal from you?" He didn't use the word steal in a literal sense, but something in his tone made me feel guilty for even questioning him. "It's not that, son. It's just that it's a lot of money. Look, Mom, if you don't want to participate in this, that's fine. But don't say later that we didn't give you the opportunity. Tiffany has an aunt who is willing to invest. Only, obviously, when the profits start rolling in, she'll receive the share that you rejected." Tiffany's aunt. Another person who was going to benefit from the opportunity I was missing out on for being scared and mistrustful. "Give me a day to think about it." "Okay, but I need the answer tomorrow morning. The window of opportunity closes on Wednesday." There was always a window of opportunity closing. There was always haste. There was always urgency. That night, I didn't sleep. I got up several times to check my hiding place, to count the bills that were left. If I gave Ethan another 200,000, I would have less than $3 million. It was still a lot of money, but it no longer seemed like the invincible fortune it had been before. For the first time in decades, I felt afraid. Afraid of being left with nothing. Afraid that my economic security was dissolving in the hands of a son who seemed to see me more as a source of funding than as a mother. But more than fear, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Doubt about the unconditional love I had always believed existed between Ethan and me. What would happen if I told him no? Would he still call me? Would he still be my son? Or was I only his mother when I had money to give him? On Tuesday morning, I dialed his number. "Mom, have you decided?" "Yes, son. I'm going to give you the money." "Perfect. Can I stop by for it this afternoon?" "But I want you to promise me one thing." "Tell me." "Next Sunday, Without fail, you come with the children. No matter what other plans you have, no matter what invitations you receive, you come here to eat with me. Of course, Mom. I promise you. It was the second promise he had made me. And I, like a fool, kept believing in the promises of a man who had just shown me that words meant nothing to him. That afternoon, I handed him another $200,000. This time, he came accompanied by Tiffany, who stayed in the living room checking her phone while Ethan and I went to the bedroom. Thanks, Mom. Seriously, this investment is going to change our lives forever. When we returned to the living room, Tiffany looked at me for the first time all afternoon. Mrs. Miller, you are so generous. Not all mothers-in-law support their children so much. Ethan is my life, I replied. Everything I've saved is for him. Tiffany smiled, but it was a strange smile, as if she knew something I didn't. Yes, he tells me you have quite a bit of money saved. It's very good that you are so far-sighted. How much had Ethan told her about my money? Did Tiffany know exactly how much I had hidden? Had they planned together how to ask for the amounts in part so as not to scare me off? They left without staying for dinner, without asking how I was, without showing interest in anything other than the money they had come to get. The following Sunday they didn't come, nor the next, nor the one after that. 3 consecutive Sundays waiting for a family that never arrived, cooking for guests who didn't show up, dressing up for celebrations that only existed in my imagination. On the 4th Sunday, I didn't cook. I didn't dress up. I didn't set the table. I simply sat on my green sofa, looking out the window, waiting for a phone to ring that never did. And that's when I understood the truth I had been denying for months. My son no longer loved me. He loved my money. And I had been so foolish as to hand over my economic security in exchange for an illusion of love that no longer existed. 2 months passed without a single call from Ethan. 2 months in which I woke up every morning hoping to hear his voice, checking my phone to make sure it worked, wondering if I had done something wrong to deserve that cruel silence. During those 8 weeks of abandonment, my routine changed completely. I no longer cooked with the hope of visitors. I barely prepared enough for myself. A scrambled egg, a soup from a packet, a grilled cheese sandwich with cheddar that I bought sliced at the market because I no longer felt like grating fresh cheese as I had done all my life. The plants in the courtyard began to wither because I forgot to water them. The geraniums I had cared for so meticulously looked sad, with yellowing leaves and flowers that no longer bloomed with their former joy. Even they seemed to feel my desolation. One Thursday afternoon, while sweeping the dry leaves the wind had blown into the courtyard, I heard familiar voices from the other side of the fence. It was Mrs. Lewis talking to her daughter Sarah. "No, I haven't seen Ethan around here in a long time," Mrs. Lewis was saying. "Poor Ellie is always alone. Sometimes I see her through the window, sitting in her living room, like she's waiting for someone who never comes." "That's odd," Sarah replied. "Yesterday I saw on Facebook that Tiffany uploaded photos of their new house, a mansion in Greenwich with a pool and everything, and Ethan has a new sports car, a red Mustang. Must have cost at least $60,000. I dropped the broom. New house, sports car, a Mustang that cost $60,000. I ran to my phone and looked up Tiffany's profile on Facebook. There were the photographs that confirmed my worst fears. A 2-story house with a huge yard, an integral kitchen with stainless steel appliances, a living room bigger than my entire first floor. Tiffany posed in every room as if she were a model in a decorating magazine. Finally, in our dream home, watch blessed our new beginnings. Dreams come true. She had written next to a photo where she toasted with champagne on their new deck. I kept checking. The red Mustang parked in the driveway, with Ethan leaning against the hood, smiling like a teenager who had just gotten his first car. The children playing in a private pool that was 3 times bigger than my entire courtyard. My money. All built with my money. The savings I had accumulated penny by penny, dollar by dollar, for 40 years of getting up before dawn to wash other people's clothes, had now become Tiffany's dream house and Ethan's sports car. I dialed his number, my hands trembling. This time he did answer, but his voice sounded different. Colder, more distant. "Hello, Mom. What do you need?" "What do you need?" As if I were a stranger asking for a favor, not his mother who had financed his new life of luxury. Ethan, I saw the photos of your new house. Silence on the other end of the line. Oh, yeah. Well, the investments turned out better than we expected. And why didn't you tell me anything? Why didn't you call me to share the good news? I've been really busy with the move, Mom. You know how complicated it is to change houses. But son, it was supposed to be an investment from which I was also going to receive profits. Another long pause. I could hear music in the background, children's voices playing, the sound of someone splashing in a pool. Yes, Mom, but we're reinvesting the profits to generate even more wealth. It's a long-term capital multiplication strategy. Everything is growing, but we need to let the money work for itself for at least 2 years before starting to distribute dividends. Capital multiplication. Dividends. Terms that sounded important, but that I didn't fully understand. And Ethan knew it. And when can I see my grandchildren? I don't even know how they are. Ryan must have grown a lot. Yes, Ryan is in 3rd grade now. Sophia just turned 6. Sophia had turned 6 and I didn't even know it. I hadn't received an invitation to the party. I hadn't been able to give her a gift. I hadn't been able to hug her and sing her happy birthday, as I had every year since she was born. When was her birthday? Last month. We had a very nice party at the new house. We had a clown, a giant inflatable ball pit. We hired a gourmet food service for the kids. Last month. While I was wondering why they weren't calling, they were celebrating my granddaughter's birthday without even telling me. And why didn't you invite me? Oh, Mom, it was a very small party. Only close family. Besides, a lot of kids came from Sophia's new school. Kids from families, well, from a different socioeconomic level. I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable. Families from a different socioeconomic level. My son, the same one who had grown up eating refried beans because we couldn't afford meat every day, was now ashamed to introduce me to his new wealthy friends. Ethan, I am your mother. Yes, of course. But, look, Mom, the truth is that Tiffany and I have been talking about this. Now that we live in a more sophisticated environment, we need to protect our social image. The kids go to expensive private schools. We hang out with important people. It's not that I'm ashamed of you, but what? But sometimes you say things inappropriate. You wear clothes that don't fit the setting. You talk loudly. You tell stories from when we were poor that we don't necessarily want everyone to know. Every word was a stab. My way of dressing, my way of speaking, my memories of our former life, everything I was had become a source of embarrassment for the son I had raised with so much love. I'm the same person who raised you, Ethan. The same one who worked day and night to give you everything you needed. Yes, Mom, and I appreciate that. But things have changed. We have changed. We are no longer the middle-class family we were before. Now we have social responsibilities, a reputation to maintain, a reputation built with my money, but from which I had been excluded. And what am I then? An embarrassment? You're not an embarrassment, Mom. You're part of our past. And it's okay to have a past, but you don't necessarily have to exhibit it all the time. Part of their past. Like an old piece of furniture stored in the basement because it no longer matched the new decor. Look, Mom, I have to hang up. The kids are going to swim and Tiffany wants me to put sunscreen on them. Wait, Ethan, when are you going to give me back part of the money? Months have passed and… Give back? Mom, you didn't lend me money. You invested in our business. Investments take time to generate returns. Besides, it's not like you need the money urgently. You live very simply. You don't have major expenses. But that money is my security. If I get sick, if I need expensive medicine, oh, Mom, don't be pessimistic. You're perfectly healthy. And if you ever need medical help, of course we'll help you. That's what family is for. Family. A word that no longer meant the same thing to him as it did to me. When can I go see your new house? This weekend won't work. Tiffany invited her parents, and you know how she is with organizing. Everything has to be perfect. Let me check my schedule and I'll let you know. His schedule. To see his own mother, he had to check his schedule. He hung up without saying goodbye. And I was left standing in my living room, holding a phone that had become my only link to a family that no longer recognized me as part of it. That night I cried as I hadn't cried since my husband's death, but these tears were different. When Robert died, I cried for lost love, for a shared life that had reached its natural end. Now I cried for rejected love, for having been discarded by the very people I had put above my own happiness for decades. The next day, I decided to do something I had never done. I went to find Ethan at his work. I took 2 buses and a subway to get to the offices in Midtown Manhattan where he worked. It was a 20-story glass building with a marble lobby and elevators that looked like spaceships. I felt completely out of place in my simple dress and comfortable shoes among suited executives who walked hurriedly with leather briefcases. I told the receptionist I wanted to see Ethan Miller. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm his mother." The young woman looked me up and down, as if evaluating whether it was possible for someone like me to have given birth to someone like Ethan. "Let me call him." She spoke softly on the phone, covering her mouth with her hand as if sharing a shameful secret. "He says he's in a very important meeting and can't receive you now. He says to call him later to coordinate." Can't receive her. His own mother. After 2 months without seeing her. "Tell him I'll wait here until he comes out." "Ma'am, you can't stay in the lobby without authorization. Then I'll wait outside." And that's what I did. I sat on the sidewalk across the street, under the midday sun, for 4 hours. The building's security guards looked at me from time to time, probably wondering what an older woman was doing sitting on the street staring intently at the entrance. At 6 in the evening, I saw Ethan come out. He was accompanied by 2 men in expensive suits, laughing at something one of them had said. When he saw me, the smile faded from his face. He walked quickly toward me, clearly annoyed. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you because you won't answer my calls. I told you I was busy. You can't just show up at my work like this." "Why not? I'm your mother." Because nobody here knows about my family situation. My colleagues don't need to know all the details of my personal life." His colleagues had stopped a few feet away, observing the scene with poorly concealed curiosity. Ethan waved to them. "I'll catch up," he shouted. "It's a personal matter I need to resolve quickly." A personal matter. That's what I was to him. A personal matter he needed to resolve quickly. "Mom, let's get out of here. We can talk somewhere else." "No, I want to talk here. I want you to explain why you're ashamed for your colleagues to know you have a mother." "I'm not ashamed, Mom. It's just that, look, everyone here thinks I come from a family with money, that I've always had resources. If they see that that you live so modestly, they're going to start asking questions I don't want to answer." "Questions like what?" "Like where I got the money for the new house, for the car, for the lifestyle I have now. It's easier if they think it's a family inheritance, that I come from a family with inherited wealth." Inherited wealth. Technically, he wasn't lying. I was going to be his inheritance. Only he had decided to claim it while I was still alive, while I could still suffer the consequences of losing it. I built that wealth, Ethan, with my own hands, and I'm not ashamed of it. You're not ashamed because you don't understand how the business world works, Mom. Image is everything here. People do business with you based on their perception of your social status. If they think you're new money, that you don't have class, they treat you differently. New money without class. That's what he thought of me. Someone who had been lucky enough to save money but didn't have the education or sophistication to manage it properly. "Go home, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll coordinate to meet somewhere more appropriate. When can I see my grandchildren?" "Soon. I promise you soon." It was the 3rd promise. And I, like an idiot, kept believing in the promises of a man who had just shown me that I was a source of embarrassment in his new life of luxury. I went home on public transport, carrying on my shoulders not only the weight of my 74 years, but also the certainty that I had raised a son who was now ashamed of the woman who had sacrificed everything to give him a better life. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't wait for his call. For the first time in years, I began to wonder if I hadn't made the biggest mistake of my life by entrusting my future to the hands of someone who saw me as an obstacle to his happiness. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the humiliating episode at the Midtown offices. This time it wasn't Ethan who was calling. It was Tiffany. "Mrs. Miller, how are you? It's Tiffany." Her voice sounded sweet, almost affectionate. So different from the cold, distant tone she had always used with me. "Hello, Tiffany. Is everything all right? How are the children? The children are perfect, ma'am. In fact, that's why I'm calling. Ryan and Sophia have been asking about you a lot. They say they miss you. My heart sped up. My grandchildren missed me. After months of silence, finally someone confirmed that my absence had been noticed, that my love had been reciprocated. Really? Ryan asks about me? Yes, ma'am. Yesterday he told me, Mommy, why don't we see Grandma Ellie anymore? I miss her stories and her grilled cheese sandwiches. And Sophia too. The other day she was looking at photos on my phone, and when she saw one of you, she started crying and said she wanted to visit you. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Finally, someone confirmed that I hadn't been completely forgotten. Tiffany, can I see them? Can they come this weekend? Of course, ma'am. In fact, that's another reason I'm calling. We want to invite you to see the new house. The kids want to show you their room, their pool, everything they have. Does Ethan agree? There was a small, almost imperceptible pause. Of course, ma'am. He wants you to come too. It's just that he's been very busy lately and asked me to coordinate with you. When can I come? How about this Saturday? We can have a family lunch. You don't have to bring anything, we'll prepare everything. Just come and enjoy your grandkids. I hung up the phone feeling a happiness I hadn't experienced in months. Finally, I was going to see Ryan and Sophia. Finally, I was going to see the house I had helped build with my savings. Finally, I was going to be a grandmother again. On Saturday, I woke up early and got dressed up as if for a wedding. I put on my floral dress, the prettiest one I had, put on the lipstick I rarely used, and even sprayed a little of the perfume I had bought for Christmas but had never dared to use. I took a cab to Greenwich, something I normally never would have allowed myself because of the cost, but it was a special day. During the ride, I imagined Ryan's hug, Sophia's excited screams when she saw me, the laughter we were going to share. The house was even more impressive in person than in the Facebook photographs. A 2-story construction with a gray stone facade, electric gate, a perfectly designed yard with palm trees and bougainvillea. Ethan's red Mustang shone in the driveway like a freshly polished jewel. Tiffany greeted me at the door. She wore a tight white dress that seemed custom-made for her, high-heeled sandals, and a smile that seemed genuine. Mrs. Miller, how lovely to see you. You look so beautiful. Thank you, dear. Your house is gorgeous. Come in, come in. The kids are in the pool, but I told them you were coming. They'll be thrilled. She guided me through a marble-floored foyer, past a huge living room with white leather sofas and a television the size of a wall. Everything was elegant, modern, expensive. Every piece of furniture, every ornament, every detail screamed money well spent. Where is Ethan? He's just arriving. He went to buy ice and a few things we forgot for lunch. We went out to the backyard, and my breath caught. The pool was spectacular. Crystal clear turquoise water with an artificial waterfall in one corner and LED lights that changed color. Around it were padded lounge chairs, giant umbrellas, and a stainless steel grill that looked professional. Ryan and Sophia were swimming. When they saw me, they ran out of the water, soaked and shouting with excitement. Grandma Ellie! Grandma Ellie! Ryan hugged me so hard he almost knocked me over. Sophia clung to my dress, leaving wet stains that didn't bother me at all. Oh, my darlings, how you've grown. Ryan, you're so tall now. And you, Sophia, more beautiful every day. Grandma, why haven't you come? I missed you so much, Sophia said with her bright little eyes. I missed you too, my love. But I'm here now. Come on, Grandma. We're going to show you everything. Ryan took my hand and started pulling me toward the house. The next 20 minutes were the happiest I had lived in months. The children showed me every corner of the house as if it were a palace. Ryan's room had a race car bed and his own television. Sophia's looked like a princess's room, with pink canopies and a 3-story dollhouse. Do you like our house, Grandma? Sophia asked. I love it, my sweet. It's the most beautiful house I've ever seen. And it was true. It was beautiful. It had been built with my money, but at that moment, seeing my grandchildren's happiness, I felt like every dollar had been worth it. Ethan arrived half an hour later, carrying bags from the most exclusive gourmet market in the area. When he saw me, his smile looked forced, but at least he greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. "Hi, Mom. What do you think of the house?" "It's incredible, son. It looks like you've worked very hard to get all this." "Yes, well, the investments turned out better than expected." Tiffany served the meal at a patio table that looked designed for a magazine. Coconut shrimp, grilled salmon, gourmet salads, imported wines. Everything delicious, everything expensive, all paid for with the money I had saved by buying cheap vegetables at the farmer's market. During the meal, the children never stopped talking to me. Ryan told me about his new school, where he had swimming and robotics classes. Sophia showed me her collection of Barbie dolls, each with a more elaborate wardrobe than the last. "Grandma, why don't you come live with us?" Ryan suddenly asked. "There are lots of empty rooms." The question took me by surprise, but before I could answer, Ethan intervened. "Ryan, Grandma is very comfortable in her house. She has her plants, her neighbors, her routines. She wouldn't like to change all that. But she could bring her plants," Sophia insisted, "and we would be her new neighbors." "Adults don't change houses as easily as children," Tiffany explained with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Grandma Ellie has her whole life settled in her house." After eating, while the children played in the pool, Tiffany invited me to see the kitchen. It was spectacular. A granite central island, stainless steel appliances, cabinets up to the ceiling, a pantry bigger than my living room. "Do you like it, Mrs. Miller?" "It's gorgeous, Tiffany. It must be a dream to cook here." "The truth is, I hardly ever cook. We have a maid and a personal chef who come 3 times a week, and when they don't, we order food through an app. There are so many options now." A woman who cooked for them. While I was still preparing my meals on my old stove, they had domestic help paid for with my money. "Mrs. Miller, can I talk to you about something important?" "Of course, dear." Tiffany moved closer to me and lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret. "Look, I know you've been very generous with us. I know that without your help, none of this would have been possible. Finally, someone recognized my contribution. Ethan told me you have more money saved, and frankly, I think it's wrong that you have it sitting there, uninvested, not generating returns." "What do you mean?" "Think about it, ma'am. With everything that's been happening lately with inflation, market volatility, and risk of dollar devaluation, your money is losing value every day it stays hidden in your house. However, if you invest it well, it could multiply." "But I don't understand investments." "That's what we're here for. Ethan has learned so much about the financial market, about cryptocurrencies, about international investment funds. He could manage your entire wealth and secure returns that allow you to live like a queen for the rest of your life. International investment funds." It sounded very sophisticated, very secure. "What amount are we talking about?" "Ethan told me you have about $3 million more saved. If we invest it well, in 2 years we could double it, maybe triple it. $3 million more." How did Tiffany know the exact amount? How much had Ethan told her about my money? "Tiffany, that money is my security. If I get sick, if I need special care, ma'am, that's exactly why you need to invest it. If you get sick and need expensive treatments, you'll need much more than $3 million. But if that $3 million turns into $6 or $10 million, then you'll have real security." There was logic in her words. With inflation, with the prices of medicine rising every year, maybe I did need my money to grow instead of remaining static. "Besides," Tiffany continued, "we will obviously always take care of you. We are family. But imagine if instead of having to worry about medical expenses, we could focus on giving you the best possible care with no economic limitations. And what would you gain by managing my money?" "We don't gain anything, ma'am. It's a family favor. Ethan has the contacts. He has the knowledge. He has access to investment opportunities that regular people like us could never get." "Regular people like us?" Tiffany, in her designer dress and her $1 million house, described herself as regular people. "Think about it, Mrs. Miller. It's a unique opportunity to secure your future and the future of your grandchildren. My grandchildren's future." Those words touched something deep in my heart. What would I have to do? Nothing complicated. Just take the money out of where you have it saved and give it to us so Ethan can invest it. He takes care of everything else. You'll just receive monthly reports on how your assets are growing. Monthly reports. It sounded very professional, very trustworthy. And what if something goes wrong? What could go wrong? Ethan is your son. Do you think he would steal from you? That same question Ethan had asked me months ago. How could I suspect my own son? Let me think about it. Of course, ma'am. But don't take too long to decide. The best investment opportunities have very small windows. If we wait too long, we could lose the chance to maximize returns. Small windows. Limited opportunities. There was always haste, always urgency. When I left that afternoon, after saying goodbye to my grandchildren through tears and promises to return soon, I carried Tiffany's offer in my mind and the certainty that my grandchildren loved me in my heart. In the taxi ride back home, I thought about Tiffany's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to trust Ethan completely, to allow him to multiply my wealth to secure a better future for everyone. Maybe it was time to hand over the last $3 million. I didn't know that decision would make me the loneliest woman in the world. I spent all of Saturday night awake, tossing and turning in bed, thinking about Tiffany's words. Her arguments echoed in my head like a persistent refrain. Inflation, devaluation, lost opportunities, the future of my grandchildren. For the first time in years, I felt like someone genuinely cared about my financial well-being. On Sunday morning, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I dialed Ethan's number. He answered on the second ring, as if he had been waiting for my call. Mom? How are you this morning? Fine, son. I've been thinking about what Tiffany told me yesterday. And what did you decide? His voice had a poorly disguised urgency that I failed to interpret at the time. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to give you the rest of the money to invest. Silence on the other end of the line. A silence so long I thought the call had been disconnected. Ethan? Are you there? Yes, Mom. Sorry, it's just, I'm so excited that you trust us. Tiffany is going to be thrilled. This is going to change our lives forever. Our lives. I like that he said our, as if we truly were a team. When can you come get the money? How about we come this afternoon? There's no time to lose. The faster we invest, the faster they'll start generating returns. That afternoon, they both arrived. Ethan carried a new gym bag, one of those executives use to go to the gym. Tiffany carried a folder with documents that, as she explained, were investment contracts I needed to sign. They're just formalities, Mrs. Miller, she said, spreading the papers on my dining table. Documents that confirm you authorize us to manage your financial assets for your benefit. The documents were full of legal terms I didn't understand. Irrevocable power of attorney, general power to administer assets, transfer of liquid wealth. The fine print looked blurry under the light of my dining room, and when I asked to read them more slowly, Tiffany explained they were standard forms from any investment firm. If you want, you can take them to a lawyer to review, Ethan said. But you would lose several days, maybe weeks, and the investment opportunities we've identified are very time-sensitive. Several weeks. By then, according to them, we would have lost the window of opportunity. I trust you, I said, and signed each document without fully reading them. I went to my room and took out all the remaining money from my hiding place. $3,125,000 in bills of different denominations, some euros, some pounds sterling. 40 years of my life converted into paper money that fit in a gym bag. While Ethan counted the bills with the precision of a bank teller, Tiffany explained the process to me. The first returns will take between 3 and 6 months to start generating. It's normal for these types of high-yield investments. But once they start, you'll receive monthly deposits that will be much more than you currently spend. How much can I expect to receive each month? Conservatively, between $12,000 and $20,000 monthly. But if the investments go as we expect, it could be up to $40,000 each month. $40,000 monthly. More than I had earned in entire years of working. The figure seemed almost impossible to me, but Ethan nodded, confirming Tiffany's words. Even in the worst-case scenario, Ethan added, you'll receive at least double what you need to live comfortably. And what will you receive for managing my investments? A small commission, Tiffany explained. It's standard in the financial industry. We usually charge between 8 and 12% annually on the profits, not the initial capital. So we only earn if you earn. 8 to 12% on the profits. It sounded reasonable. It sounded fair. Ethan finished counting the money and closed the gym bag with the satisfaction of someone who had just completed an important transaction. Done, Mom. We'll start the process tomorrow. As soon as we have the first performance reports, we'll bring them to you so you can see your wealth growing. They left after dinner, promising to keep me informed of every step of the process. Tiffany hugged me at the door with a warmth she had never shown before. You made the right decision, Mrs. Miller. Your future is secured. The first 2 weeks passed in strange tranquility. For the first time in months, I didn't have the constant anxiety of worrying about my money. It was in expert hands, growing, multiplying, securing my old age. Ethan called me every third day to give me progress reports. Everything is going great, Mom. The investment advisors are very optimistic. They say we chose the perfect time to enter the market. When will I see the first results? The process takes time, but they are already moving the money to international accounts to maximize returns. It's all very technical, but trust that we are doing the right thing. International accounts. It sounded very sophisticated, very professional. At the end of the second month, I started to feel curious for more details. Ethan, could you bring me some documents that show how the investments are going? I'd like to see numbers, reports, something to help me understand the process. Sure, Mom. This week I'll bring you everything printed so you can look at it calmly. But the week passed without him coming. When I asked, he said he had been waiting for the full monthly report to bring it all at once. It's better for you to see the complete information all at once, so you don't get confused with partial reports. In the third month, my calls started going straight to voicemail more frequently. When I managed to get through, Ethan always sounded busy, always in a hurry. Mom, I'm in a super important meeting. Can I call you back later? But later never came. One Tuesday afternoon, desperate for news, I decided to go directly to their new house in Greenwich. I took 2 buses and walked 15 minutes from the nearest stop until I reached their gated community. The house looked different. There were 2 more cars in the driveway. A white BMW I hadn't seen before, and a black suburban SUV with tinted windows. There was more furniture in the yard than I remembered, and I heard loud music coming from the pool area. I rang the doorbell several times before anyone came to open it. It was a young woman I didn't know, dressed like a domestic worker. Good afternoon. I'm looking for Ethan Miller. Who is asking? I'm his mother. The woman looked at me strangely, as if it were impossible for someone like me to be Ethan's mother. Let me ask him. She closed the door and left me waiting outside for 10 minutes. When she returned, she brought a message. The gentleman says he's in a very important business meeting and can't receive you now. He says to call him tomorrow to coordinate. Tell him I'm his mother and I need to speak to him. I already told him, ma'am. He says he can't receive you. I stood in front of the closed door, feeling reality begin to crumble beneath my feet. My own son refused to receive me in the house he had bought with my money. The next day, I dialed his number very early. No answer all day. On Thursday, I tried Tiffany's number. No answer either. On Friday, I went to their house again. This time, no one was there. The cars weren't in the driveway. The windows were closed. It looked like an empty house. I asked the neighbor next door if he knew anything about the Miller family. The ones in the gray house? They left about a week ago with suitcases. Looked like they were going on a trip. We haven't seen any movement since then. On a trip. With suitcases. Without telling me. On Monday, I went to the Midtown Manhattan offices where Ethan worked. The same receptionist from the last time recognized me. Ma'am, are you here to see Mr. Miller again? Yes. Is he in his office? Ma'am, Mr. Miller no longer works here. He quit about 3 weeks ago. Quit. 3 weeks ago. Right after receiving my money. Did he leave a contact address? A phone number? No, ma'am. He just said he was going to dedicate himself to his personal investments and no longer needed to work for anyone else. His personal investments. My $3 million had become his personal investments. I returned home in shock. During the commute on public transport, reality descended upon me like raindrops turning into a storm. Ethan had quit his job because he no longer needed it. He had my money. He had gone on a trip, probably a long vacation, with the money I had saved for 40 years. That night I took out the documents I had signed and read them with the attention I should have paid from the beginning. Irrevocable power of attorney meant I couldn't cancel the authorization I had given him. General power to administer assets meant he could do whatever he wanted with my money. Transfer of liquid wealth meant it was no longer mine. I had signed my own financial ruin. I called a lawyer the next day. He charged me $500 for a half-hour consultation to tell me what I already knew in the bottom of my heart. Ma'am, according to these documents, you granted your son complete authorization to manage your money. It's completely legal. Technically, he didn't steal anything from you. You gave it to him voluntarily. Is there nothing I can do? You could sue for fraud, but you would have to prove you were misled with false information. And frankly, according to these contracts, he complied with informing you he was going to invest your money. If the investments went bad, it's a risk you assumed by signing. If the investments went bad, as if there had actually been investments. And what if he never invested anything? What if he kept all the money? You would have to prove that too. And it would be very difficult without access to his bank accounts or financial documents. I left the lawyer's office with the official confirmation of my economic ruin, but strangely, I didn't feel defeated. I felt free. I had nothing left to lose. That night, sitting in my empty living room, looking at the walls that held 40 years of memories, I finally understood the truth I had been denying for months. Ethan had never seen me as his mother. He had seen me as his inheritance, and he had decided to collect it while I was still alive, while I could still suffer the consequences of losing it. But what he didn't know was that he had awakened something in me that had been dormant for decades, my survival instinct. And for the first time in my life, I was going to fight for myself, not for him. The first days after the revelation were the darkest of my life. I stayed in bed for 48 hours straight, without bathing, without eating, without answering the phone that rang occasionally with calls from people selling insurance or credit cards. People who, ironically, wanted to offer me financial products when I had nothing left to insure. On Wednesday morning, as I looked at my bedroom ceiling, counting the damp stains that had formed with the rains of the past year, my doorbell rang. At first I ignored it, thinking it would be some street vendor or the Jehovah's Witnesses who visited the neighborhood every week. But the bell kept ringing. Insistently, urgently. I got up with trembling legs and walked to the door. Through the frosted glass I could see the silhouette of a young woman. "Mrs. Miller, it's Lucy, your granddaughter." My heart stopped. Lucy, Ethan's eldest daughter, was 17, and I hadn't seen her since the Christmas before. I opened the door and found her standing in my doorway, with a school backpack on her back and red eyes from crying. "Lucy, my love, what are you doing here? How did you get here?" "I took the bus, Grandma. I needed to talk to you." She was the first person in months to call me Grandma with genuine affection. "Come in, my dear. Do you want water? Something to eat?" "Just water, please." We sat in my living room, and for the first time in days, I felt I had a reason to pull myself together, to be strong. Lucy looked at me with an expression of sadness that didn't belong on her face. "Grandma, is it true that you gave all your money to my dad?" The question hit me like a slap. How did Lucy know about the money? Who told you that? "I heard them fighting last night. My dad and Tiffany. They were arguing about very big numbers, about investments they had made, about you. Tiffany said you were a stupid old woman who had handed everything over without asking questions." Stupid old woman. That's what Tiffany thought of me. My dad told her to shut up, that you were his mother and deserved respect. But Tiffany kept saying horrible things, that you were easy to manipulate, and that it had been like taking candy from a baby. Every word was a stab, but coming from Lucy's mouth, they carried a different weight. It was confirmation of what I already knew, but had refused to fully accept. Where are they now? They went to Europe. They said they were going to be gone for 3 months, that it was a business trip. But I saw the suitcases, Grandma. They weren't business suitcases. They were vacation suitcases. Lots of beachwear, party clothes. Europe, 3 months. With my money. And where are you going to stay? They left me with Aunt Sandra, Tiffany's sister. But she lives in a very small apartment and has her own kids. She told me 3 months was too long and to look for alternatives. Lucy, my 17-year-old granddaughter, had been abandoned while her parents went on a European vacation, with the money it had taken my entire life to save. Why did you come to me, my love? Because I realized something, Grandma. All my life I thought my dad was a good man, a good father. But when I heard him talking about you like that, When I realized he had conned you, I understood I don't know him at all. Conned. My own granddaughter had used that word. And I also understood something else, Lucy continued, that if he was capable of doing that to you, who is his mother, he'll do it to me someday too. When I have something he wants. When I'm an obstacle to something he desires. Lucy's wisdom astonished me. At 17, she had understood something it had taken me 74 years to learn, that there are people who see others, even their own family, as resources to exploit rather than human beings to love. Can I stay with you, Grandma? I don't have money to help with expenses, but I can work. I can clean, cook, take care of the yard. I don't want to be around people who think it's okay to hurt the people who love them. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. A small but genuine smile. Of course you can stay, my love. This house will always be your home. That afternoon, as Lucy put her things away in the guest room, I realized that something had changed within me. I was no longer just Ellie, the woman who had been betrayed and abandoned. Now I was Ellie, the grandmother who had to protect Lucy from the same emotional predators who had destroyed me. I had a responsibility. I had a purpose. The next day, I went to the bank for the first time in years. Not to withdraw money. I had nothing left to withdraw, but to understand exactly what my financial situation was. The executive who attended to me was a young man in his 30s, polite, but clearly bored of dealing with a client who only had a savings account with a minimal balance. Mrs. Miller, according to our records, your account has a balance of $320. $320. All that remained of 40 years of work. Is there any other account in my name? Any investments? No, ma'am. Just this savings account. And if someone had opened accounts using my personal information, we would have a record if they had used your Social Security number, SSN, or your official ID. There are no other accounts associated with your data. I left the bank with official confirmation of my economic ruin. But strangely, I didn't feel defeated. I felt free. I had nothing left to lose. That afternoon, Lucy and I sat in the courtyard to plan our future. She had gotten a part-time job at a coffee shop near her school, and I had decided it was time to go back to work. Work in what, Grandma? You're 74 years old. Whatever is necessary, my dear. Babysit, clean houses, catering. I did those things for decades before your father was born. I can do them again. But Grandma, Lucy, I'm going to tell you something I hope you never forget. No matter how many times life knocks you down, you can always get up if you have a reason to do so. Now, you are my reason. The following days were a revelation. I started offering my homemade cooking services at the local market. I prepared food for catering, trays of lasagna for parties, smoked brisket for barbecues, large pot roasts for family gatherings. Mrs. Johnson, who had the bakery stall at the farmer's market, helped me get my first clients. Ellie, you've cooked deliciously your whole life. It was silly that you had so much money saved without using it for something productive. Now that you have to work, you'll see how satisfying it is to earn a living with your own hands again. It was true. Every dollar I earned cooking tasted different from the dollars I had saved for years. These I had earned myself, with my current effort, with my dignity intact. Lucy helped me in the afternoons, after school. She learned to make fresh rolls by hand, to grind spices in the food mill, to prepare sauces that our customers loved so much they started ordering them separately. Grandma, don't you miss the money you had saved? Do you know what I miss, my love? I miss having believed that money was going to give me security. True security doesn't come from what you have saved, but from what you know how to do, from the people who truly love you, from confidence in yourself. One afternoon, as we were preparing apple pies and baked goods for a 4th of July celebration, Lucy asked me a question that surprised me. Do you think my dad will come back? Yes, my dear. He'll come back when he runs out of money. And what will happen when he comes back? I paused while peeling walnuts, feeling the natural oil of the nuts on my fingers, remembering all the times I had prepared this dish for family celebrations when Ethan was a child. When he comes back, he's going to meet a different woman. He's no longer going to find the Ellie who gave him everything without asking for anything in return. He's going to find an Ellie who knows her worth, who knows the difference between being loved and being used. And if he comes asking for forgiveness, if he says it was all a misunderstanding, Then I'm going to tell him something I should have told him years ago, that love can't be bought, that respect isn't negotiated, and that a mother is not a walking bank account. Lucy laughed at that phrase, and her laughter filled the kitchen with a joy I hadn't felt in months. Besides, I added as I beat the cream for the pie filling, I don't need his love anymore. I have yours, which is genuine. I have my work, which gives me purpose, and I have my dignity, which no one can take from me unless I give it away. That night, as I watched Lucy do her homework at the dining table, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in decades, I was completely happy. I didn't have money, but I had something much more valuable. I had recovered my identity. I was no longer the suffering mother who sacrificed herself for an ungrateful son. I was Eleanor Hope Miller, a 74-year-old woman who had survived the worst betrayal of her life and had come out stronger on the other side. And when Ethan returned, because I knew he would return, he wouldn't find the same woman he had left behind. He would find someone who had learned, finally, to love herself. 6 months later, while preparing trays of glazed donuts for Thanksgiving, I heard the sound I had been waiting for, the engine of a familiar car parking in front of my house. Lucy was at school, so I faced the moment alone, knowing it would come sooner or later. Through the curtain in the living room, I saw Ethan get out of the same red Mustang, but he looked different now. He no longer wore brand-name clothes. He no longer had that successful executive attitude. He looked tired. He knocked on the door with the same urgency as always, but I was no longer the same woman who rushed to open it. I finished wrapping the donut I had in my hands, wiped my palms on my apron, and walked to the door without haste. "Hello, Ethan. Mom, we need to talk." His voice no longer had the arrogant confidence of before. It sounded like the voice of someone who had lost something important and had just realized it. "Come in. I'm working, but we can talk while I cook." I led him to the kitchen, where the dough waited to be converted into donuts I already had sold for Saturday's celebration. My little business had grown so much that I now had orders a week in advance. "Working? What are you working at?" "I do catering. Donuts, pot roasts, party food. I'm doing very well." Ethan looked around the kitchen with a confused expression, as if he couldn't understand how his mother had ended up working again at 74. "Mom, I came to explain everything. The investments. They didn't go as we expected." "What investments, Ethan?" "The ones we made with your money. There were complications. The European market behaved unexpectedly. The advisors recommended strategies that turned out to be very risky." He continued talking for 10 minutes, inventing an elaborate story about international funds, currency fluctuations, unforeseen economic crises. All very technical, all very convincing for someone who didn't understand finance. But I was no longer that woman. "Ethan, stop. You don't need to lie to me anymore." "Lie to you?" "Mom, I'm not lying to you. I know we lost your money, but it was due to circumstances beyond our control." Lucy told me the truth. He stopped cold. The dough fell from his hands. "Lucy? What does Lucy have to do with this?" "Lucy lives with me now, since you left for Europe and abandoned her with your sister-in-law." "We didn't abandon her. We told her it was temporary." "Lucy heard your conversations, Ethan. She knows there were never any investments. She knows Tiffany called me a stupid old woman. She knows you spent my money on trips and luxuries while I was left with nothing. For the first time in years, I saw my son without masks, without lies, without acting. He looked exactly like what he was, a 36-year-old man who had betrayed his mother and was now facing the consequences. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know we hurt you, but I can explain everything. There's nothing to explain. You planned everything from the beginning. Tiffany knew exactly how much money I had because you told her. You calculated how much to ask for each time so as not to alarm me. You used my grandchildren as emotional bait. It was a perfectly designed con. It wasn't like that. Where is Tiffany?" Silence. "Where is Tiffany, Ethan?" She left." "What do you mean she left?" "When the money ran out, she met someone else in Italy, an older businessman. She left me for him." There was the truth. Tiffany had left Ethan as soon as his mother's money had run out. She had used him too, even though he had been her willing accomplice. "And the children?" "Ryan and Sophia are with her. She says they'll have a better education, better opportunities in Italy. Tiffany had taken the grandchildren too. Ethan had lost everything. The money, the wife, the children. And what do you want from me now? I need to stay here for a few days. Until I can find a job. Until I can sort out my situation. Is that why you came? To ask me to support you after you stole everything I had? Mom, I'm your son. Yes, you are my son. And that is precisely why what you did hurts me so much. I continued preparing the donuts as I spoke, my hands working the dough with the precision that comes from years of experience. The work gave me peace. It reminded me who I really was. Do you know what hurt me the most, Ethan? It wasn't losing the money. It was discovering that for years, while I gave you unconditional love, you saw me as a source of income. That every time you said, "I love you," you were calculating how much that affection was worth in dollars and cents. That's not true. When was the last time you visited me without asking for money? When was the last time you asked me how I was, what I needed, if I felt lonely? He couldn't answer because there was no answer. For years, every call, every visit, every show of affection had been conditional on some financial need. Lucy comes home from school every day to help me. She tells me about her classes, her friends, her dreams. She hugs me without asking for anything in return. At 17, she understands family love better than you do at 36. Can I see her? She decides if she wants to see you or not. But I'll tell you in advance that she is very hurt. She realized that if you were capable of betraying me, you could also betray her. Ethan sat in my kitchen for an hour, watching me work, watching me prepare the food that was feeding me, watching how I had rebuilt my life from scratch after he destroyed it. Mom, do you forgive me? I forgive you, Ethan. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. Can I stay? You can stay for 3 days. Enough time for you to find a job and rent a room on your own. But there are rules. Don't touch my things. Don't ask me for money. Don't disrespect Lucy, and don't expect me to cook or do your laundry. I am no longer your free domestic worker. It was the first time in my life I had set clear boundaries with my son. During those 3 days, Ethan experienced something he had never lived, the real consequences of his actions. He had to look for jobs he considered beneath his level. He had to explain in interviews why he had been unemployed for months. He had to accept that he was no longer the successful executive with a house in Greenwich and a sports car. Lucy arrived on the second day and greeted him with polite coldness. "Hi, Dad." "Lucy, my dear, I missed you so much." "Really? Because you didn't call me even once in 3 months." "I was solving important problems." "More important than your daughter?" Ethan didn't know how to respond. Lucy had the brutal honesty of teenagers who no longer believe the lies of adults. On the third day, as Ethan packed the few things he had brought, he told me something I never thought I would hear. "Mom, I think I never understood how strong you are." "I'm not strong, Ethan. I'm necessary. For Lucy. For my customers. For myself. When you are necessary, you find a strength you didn't know you had. Do you think we can be a family again someday? We are family, son. But now it's a different family. One where respect is mutual, where love isn't bought, where each person is valued for who they are, not what they have." He left that day with a small suitcase and the address of a room he had rented near the bus station. A modest room for a man who had owned a mansion bought with someone else's money. 6 months later, Lucy graduated from high school with honors. Ethan came to the ceremony, driving a used sedan he had bought with the salary from his job as a salesman at an appliance store. He looked different, more humble, more real. "Congratulations, sweetie," he told Lucy after the ceremony. "Thanks. Are you coming to the lunch Grandma organized?" I had prepared a special dinner at home to celebrate Lucy's achievement. It wasn't the costly party Ethan would have organized in his days of easy money, but it was made with genuine love. During the dinner, Ethan helped me serve without being asked. Lucy talked about her plans to study accounting at the State University. "I want to be an accountant, Grandma, to help people like you not get conned by their own family members." It was her subtle way of reminding her father that the wounds were still fresh. Today, 2 years later, Lucy is in her second semester of accounting. Ethan visits on Sundays and sometimes helps me with large catering orders. He has never asked me for money again, and I have never offered it to him without him asking. I am 76 years old, I work every day, and I am happier than I was during the decades when I had $3 million hidden in the wall. Because I learned something they don't teach in schools. True wealth is not in what you save, but in what you build. It is not in what you accumulate, but in what you give freely. It is not in having economic security, but in having the certainty that you can survive any loss if you keep your dignity intact. My son stole my money, but he couldn't steal my capacity to love, to work, to start over. And in the end, that was the only thing that truly mattered. Have you ever lived, or do you know someone who has been through something similar? Tell me in the comments if this story reminded you of someone you know. If this story touched your heart, leave me a like and subscribe to the channel so this message reaches someone who needs to hear it. Because we all deserve to be loved for who we are, not for what we have.